Mhm.
Hey everybody, Ty Leon Guerrero here, and I have a very special guest, Mr. Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. How you doing, Michael?
Hey Ty, how are you? Thanks for the invitation. This is a very worthwhile conversation we're about to have.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you taking the time, especially on such short notice. And today's topic is very, very simple, but also I think very important in that, Michael, I'm getting a lot of questions from not just customers, not just clients, not just people I know, but even very specifically, family members, people that have owned their homes for 30, 40, 50 years.
Mhm.
My aunt and uncle, they also have some rental properties, things like that. I'm getting a lot of people that are really confused and equally very concerned about what's going to happen in this election. And I know there's so much focus on the presidential side of it that I think people are losing sight as to what's going on here in California with propositions that affect real estate, affect real estate values, and holding real estate long time. So how about that for a conversation today, Michael?
Well, first and foremost, I'm very excited to see that people are energized by the elections. One of the things that we need to appreciate, understand, and do more of, frankly, is be active in local politics. Because when you really step back and look at what's going on across the country, sure, every 4 years, there's a presidential election, but most of the decisions that impact our individual lives are done at the state or even the local level. So I would ask and support the idea that elections are important. If you want to see change in your neighborhood, your county, your state, you need to vote every year, not every 4 years. Don't be one of those people that complain and then don't show up at the elections. Make your voice heard. And we're going to talk about three propositions here. And, make sure your voice is heard. Nothing frustrates me more when people complain and then they don't go vote. Because again, one of the precious things we have in the United States is the ability to vote and make sure each and every one of our voices is heard. So I'm glad people are excited, and I'm glad people are asking questions. That's good.
100%. Thank you, Michael. So let's just jump right into it. So Proposition 15, tell me what you think. Can we maybe explain a little bit about it, and let's get into a conversation on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just realize as I share my thoughts on each of these propositions, just so you can understand, I'm a real estate person. I own a bunch of rental properties. All of my investments are in California. I've been doing it 20 years. So appreciate that my opinion is probably biased. Totally okay. But just, I share it with good intentions, but realize where the bias comes from. So first and foremost, Prop 15. Prop 15 kind of paints the vision of, hey, there are some people out there, usually corporations, that aren't paying their fair share in property taxes. In California, one of the things that we have and have had for decades is something called Prop 13, right? Prop 13 is really what allowed my mom, who, bought a house with the GI Bill back in the 70s, to stay in the Silicon Valley, right? She never made a lot of money, but she was able to stay because as her value of her home skyrocketed, her property tax bill did not, right? She lived in that for 40 some odd years, and her property tax bills were hundreds of dollars, where her neighbors were 20, 30, $40,000 because the neighborhood just grew up around her. Prop 13 is what saved her. Prop 13 is what has saved teachers and firefighters and policemen and civil servants from being priced out of the market. So Prop 13 has saved a lot of people.
Yeah.
That said, our state coffers are impacted because when Prop 13 was written, all real estate was equal, right? Whether it's Disneyland, which is the biggest example I can think of, right? Which is hundreds of acres in Southern California, and a little condo, I don't know, in Vacaville or something, right? All of it is treated the same. You are basically charged your property taxes at purchase, and then it goes up no more than 2% a year. Hence, Disneyland is paying a ridiculously low property tax bill given the amount of acreage that they own in Southern California because they bought it, I don't know, 100 years ago, 80 years ago, whatever it was. So that's the problem, right? Our state needs money. The Prop 13, as it was written, is all inclusive. All real estate is equal. So what the powers that be are looking to do is they are looking to crack the egg of Prop 13. My opinion is, while it is an interesting idea, very creative, it is a first step on a slippery slope that I do not trust them to go down. Prop 13, again, as I said earlier, saves people. I believe if we allow our governor and the state legislature to break Prop 13, even under the guise of penalizing Disneyland, they will just keep taking. It will go from commercial and industrial. It will then go multifamily. It will then go second home. And ultimately, 4, 5, 6 years down the line, it will go single family. All because Prop 15 gave them the ability to crack the egg. I personally think it's like Humpty Dumpty. Once Humpty Dumpty falls, can't put him back together. Prop 13, all inclusive. Yes, there is some downside, but I think the upside is there. And I wish I trusted our state legislature not to do this. I just don't. They have gone through and not listened to us, the voters, before. And we'll talk about this with Prop 21. We had a proposition last year, I think it was Prop 10, that we voted against. And good old California leaders said, oh, we don't like your choice. Let's go create an assembly bill and approve it anyway. So no, I don't trust our leadership. They've proven, in my opinion, to be not trustworthy. I certainly understand why. Logically makes perfect sense. But I just don't trust them long term. I think they ultimately would hurt my mom, who, again, stayed on that house for 40 years. I would not have been able to grow up in the Silicon Valley if her property tax bill went up. And I think if they crack it with Prop 15, people like my mom will be eventually hurt. And it won't be this year, won't be next year. But once Prop 13 is cracked, they will keep coming, is my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And thank you for your comments and sharing. And I think it's important too that people understand that, like your mom, like your family, I have, obviously my aunt and uncle's family who've also owned properties for over 40 plus years, and that are, working class families who are able to get a piece of the American dream, whether that even be just buying, their own single family home or a residence, but also even maybe buying a handful of rental properties as a part of that American dream. And so, right, like your family from Silicon Valley, I mean, working class family, or were you guys Silicon Valley? Some people hear Silicon Valley, they think, billionaires and high tech. I mean, you guys are normal.
No, my parents graduated high school, served in the military, never went to a 4-year university, never made more than 50 grand a year. My mom was a stay-at-home mom till I was in high school. So no, we did not come from, anything. If our property tax bill would have gone up as fast as the values have gone up, we would have been out probably in the 80s, certainly in the early 90s. We just couldn't afford it. We would have lost the home.
Yeah. And so too, I think also, let's talk about also, and I think it's important because I think from all sides, we have a lot of real estate investors who watch your podcast, watch the things we do in Squad Up. We also have people that are just regular people that are maybe trying to get that first one rental at a time, or, that are aspiring working class people that are, wanting to buy their first home or do something along those lines. And so let's talk about Prop 15 specifically with commercial and industrial, right? We said, okay, if they're able to get this done first, what's next? Multifamily, ag. We didn't talk about agriculture, right? So think about, like, if they raise the taxes on Disneyland, if they raise the taxes on commercial and industrial real estate, is it really going to take away from the rich? Or what's the truth with where that extra tax money is going to come from?
Well, the reality is anytime costs go up, cost is an expense on the balance, or it's on the income statement. And the only way to make up for an expense is to raise the revenue line. So, It's amazing, right? If you raise Disneyland's taxes to what it could be, Disneyland's tickets could double, right? So that's really inflationary.
Yeah.
And again, businesses, landlords, all of this stuff. If you raise the property taxes, yes, my property tax bill goes up, but I have to raise my tenants' rent, right? Being
Right.
a landlord is not a high margin business, right? It's under 10% for most people. So, you know, and folks in California, you can look to Texas, right? Texas resets property taxes every year. And we now know because Texas has had some amazing appreciation recently that um, old cash flow properties no longer cash flow. And there are people that I know that are losing their rentals because they are now what I call alligators.
Yeah.
So if you allow, the cracking of Prop 13, you will eventually lose the control of knowing what your expenses are, because California could become like Texas. And if you reassess properties every year, it doesn't end well. That's a very messy picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And it's interesting that, I mean, in the end, the additional expense of property taxes is going to be passed on to consumers. That just
Exactly.
means your big box commercial, big, Best Buy, Targets, Walmart, any of these users are going to have to increase their pricing in order to cover that additional tax.
Well, there's one other option. The other option is they leave. We lose small businesses. We lose big box stores because there's only two options. You increase the expenses. There's three things. Companies could choose to take a margin hit. It's possible, unlikely, but possible. Two, they raise prices to cover the cost. Or they look at this and go, you know what? California is just too hard to do business with. I'm not going to service that market anymore. I am out here. And we are seeing small businesses already exit. I saw something from Yelp where 60% of the small businesses in San Francisco have already closed in the restaurant, health and beauty, and gym area. That's tragic, just tragic.
Totally tragic. I couldn't agree with you more. So again, Prop 15, we would encourage you to really take a hard look at that. Obviously, Michael and I'm a real estate broker, also investor. We do a lot of real estate transactions and such. And as Michael mentioned, he is a landlord. But again, I think for the overall health, I really believe that transparent taxes, if they're going to raise income tax, that's transparent. If you're increasing sales tax, that's very transparent in order to cover revenue that's needed by the state.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it in a way where they're taking away property taxes or the ability to increase the property taxes just seems very detrimental to lose businesses. And in the long run, those expenses and increases are going to be passed to consumers anyway.
Yeah. And again, there's the last thing on this one. They are really trying to market this as, hey, we're going to go after the big bad companies. What I would tell you is, has our leadership in the state shown you anything that they won't show this Humpty Dumpty crack and go after more? If we give them an inch, they have proven to take a mile. And I am not willing to see, again, when I see this bill and I've read it, I go, I couldn't vote for this. My mom, again, I go back to my mom. It's a very personal story for me. She wouldn't have been able to stay and my life would have been different. And there's lots of moms out there, who got the American dream, and to see them lose it because, Humpty Dumpty gets cracked and Prop 13 slowly gets eroded away is tragic in my mind. And I won't be supporting that for sure.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Michael. Let's move on to Prop 19. We won't spend a lot of time on Prop 19, but it's really interesting. Why don't we get your take on it?
Yeah, I think Prop 19 has a couple of intricate parts, and I haven't really internalized where I stand on this one yet, but I will share with you what I understand it to be and would love feedback. One of the reasons I do these interviews a lot is because I share my thoughts and we collect comments and feedback and get more well-rounded. I don't ever proclaim to have all the right answers. I have an opinion. It's mine. It comes from 20 years experience being a landlord, a 50-year resident of California. So this is where it comes from. Prop 19 offers a couple of really cool things. First and foremost, one of the things that is helpful that a few cities or counties have is the ability for, again, I'll use my mom as an example, who's in Santa Clara County. She could right, under this bill, take her low property tax basis with her if she sold this house and moved to another county, call it the Inland Empire, another county in California, right? There's cross county agreements where historically, right, she sells her Sunnyvale home for 7 figures and then she buys something in the gold country. She's now up her property tax bill, which is what she did because this wasn't around. If this existed, she could have carried her property taxes from Sunnyvale, which were really low, to her new place where she's retired and hopefully enjoys several decades for the rest of her life. I'm encouraged by that. I think, when we think baby boomers who control most of the wealth, which is, where my mom falls in the generation, she's a baby boomer. I think there's a lot of baby boomers, especially in the Silicon Valley in LA, that have 20, 30, 40 years in a house. Their kids are long gone. They're rolling around in too much space. They would like to do something else, but they are constrained, property tax constrained. So I think it's a very good idea. I think it is something very creative that was created years ago, but this allows it to go statewide. So I support that aspect of it. Where I need to read up on it, and you got to check the language in these bills. There's a second part to this that talks about the rich, the uber rich, the wealthy, the actors, the Silicon Valley CEOs. For the folks that have second homes or third homes or beachfront stuff, non-primary residents, there is some language in there that basically makes it so when the baby boomer passes and then transitions it to Gen X or millennial, that there will be a step up in what's called basis. If that's true, and I can understand what the threshold is, right? Is the threshold $10 million property? Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's not your average mom and pop, right? But is it $1 million? I don't know. There's a lot of Bay Area homes that have eclipsed the $1 million level that could be really impactful. So I got to read that language. I didn't see it in there. It's not one I researched a lot. I definitely looked at 15 and 21 a lot more. But I think in general, 19 has a lot going for it. Certainly the transition, again, going back to my mom moving from point A to point B for property taxes is a good idea. It also encourages, brokers should really love it. Real estate agents and brokers should love Prop 19 because you could unlock sales in some of the most expensive parts of the Silicon Valley, right? Go talk to people in their 60s and 70s or maybe even 50s, probably 60s and 70s and go, hey, your Palo Alto home's, worth 2.3 and has been touched since 1950. You want to go somewhere else and move into a new home? I think Prop 19 has a lot going for it. I just need to understand the thresholds. Because again, these propositions are written in a way where sometimes, I don't know if they're purposely confusing, but you got to watch each word because they can be really subtle sometimes.
Very much so. There definitely can be some tricky language. Again, with Prop 19, same type of opinion. I think the being able to go from county to county, statewide, I think is obviously great. I agree that it could definitely create another mini boom, a micro boom within where you have people that have always wanted to go to Sacramento or the Central Valley to be closer to their kids or grandkids or to other parts of the state, that this would then allow them to transfer and take their Prop 13 with them.
Yeah.
Their low tax base.
What I would tell you, Ty, and any agent or broker that watches this, if Prop 19 passes on November 3rd, I would dive in deep and become the Prop 19 expert in your county. And then I would market the hell out of it. I would sell that service. I would do an analysis. I would do 10 videos on it immediately if it passes. Because it will be helpful. I truly believe it. If that piece of it, it will be very helpful.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Michael. So let's move on to Prop 21. Let's talk about some rent control.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts here?
Prop 21. Well, there's so much to talk about Prop 21. First and foremost, I think it's almost comical that for the first time in my adult life, I actually agree with Gavin Newsom, which really actually frightens me because I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan, but he votes no on Prop 21, as do I, or as I will. Our reasons are different but nonetheless, a no is a no, right? So a couple of things. First, you have to realize Prop 21 is the second version of Prop 10. Last year, people in California may remember that we had a rent control on the ballot. I believe it was called Prop 10. It was resoundingly defeated, shockingly defeated, if you listen to Gavin. Something like 67% voted no. Gavin Newsom does what he always does, says, you, the California citizens, don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to create an assembly bill. I think it was 1482, and I'm going to institute the strictest rent control California has ever had statewide, which he did January 1, 2020. So sometimes I wonder why we vote, because he's just going to do what he wants to do in an assembly bill anyway, which is not what our system is made for. So very disappointing. I will never forget that he did that. He could go on to cure cancer, and I would never forget that he did that. But Prop 21 is just another version of rent control. It was created just like Prop 10 to go after, what's it called? Costa. I don't know. There was something created years ago that you can't adopt rent control. But basically it just goes deeper and further into rent control. And what Gavin Newsom is saying, don't worry about it. I already got you covered. We have the strictest rent control already on the book. So this is redundant. And what Gavin is saying, and I believe as well, is it will detract from new development. We need affordable housing. And there is some language in Proposition 21 that will discourage further development, which is what he doesn't like about it. But for me, it's just another rent control. We already have it. It's Assembly Bill 1482, I believe. It started January 1, 2020. And, we are in a pandemic and rents are already going down. Like San Francisco rents are down 20% already. It's a supply-demand problem. What our legislature needs to do around real estate is trying to stop trying to legislate good behavior. They need to start removing the burden and cost of permitting and lots and all of those things. The fact that putting in a lot in California can cost anywhere from 80 to 200 grand just for permitting is ridiculous. How can you build an affordable house if once just getting the dirt right's 200 grand? It just doesn't make any sense. Our legislatures need to do their goddamn job and attack that and stop going at what they're going for is the headlines. Oh, we adopted rent control, and oh, get the greedy landlords, and oh, this, oh, that. When instead they should be lowering the cost of building. We have a supply-demand problem that does not get better with rent control. You can go back and look at rent control anywhere in the US, anywhere in Europe. And what happens with rent control over time is you lose units. Owners, like myself, can say, you know what? I no longer want to rent this as an affordable house. I will give my tenants a 60-day notice, which I have a legal ability to do. I will then spend 20, 30, 40 grand fixing it up, and then I will sell it owner occupant. What is going to happen because of the eviction moratorium, because of rent control, all of this stuff is California is going to have less single family home rentals. And it's all because our legislature have enacted rules that target greedy landlords. The greedy landlords are going to say, thank you very much. I'm going to sell them to eager home buyers. What is the hottest market today, Ty? It's home buyers.
Yep.
So great. I'll take my 40 single family homes, ask the tenants politely with a 60-day notice to leave. I'll remodel the 40 homes and then sell them owner occupant. Nothing illegal about that. But what happened? Tenants have less supply. Tenants need to go to unsafer units. Less supply means higher rent. It's just a bad recipe for tenants. They're hurting the people they want to help, when in reality, they need to lower the cost of building. Go look at that, Mr. Gavin Newsom. Come on.
Yeah, no, spot on, spot on. It's an inventory problem for sure. It's interesting too that I'm, as a landlord, obviously, just like you, I'm not a fan of rent control, and I personally believe in the free markets and just allow the fair market rents and the ebb and flow of tenant demand versus inventory and allow that to happen.
You know what's really funny about Assembly Bill 1482?
Please.
The funniest thing about 1482 is I fundamentally have to change how I treat my tenants. Let me give you an example. Before that, if you paid rent on time every year or every month for the year, I wouldn't raise your rents. It'd be zero increase. I'm happy. Now, 1482 says I have to raise rents 5% or I get behind and I can never make it up.
Right. Right.
That's amazing. 1482 benefits me, but I don't want it to. I want to reward tenants. But now once you get behind, once you are under market, you can never catch up.
Right.
And when you're under market, it affects what? Your value and your cap rate and your net operating income. There's a huge ripple effect.
Yeah.
Again, 1482 told me I have to change how I operate and I have to raise rents every year. It's tragic. It's unfortunate.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more. And it even affects the marketability, not just the value, but the marketability, because some people, they won't buy a 2-unit or a 4-unit building because the rents haven't been increased over the last 10 years. And the rents are so low that you can just absolutely never catch them up unless you get voluntary turns.
You can't. No, that is, I have looked at several small commercials. So these were probably like 8s and 12s this year that are 30% under market.
Yep.
And given the rules of the road today, you can never catch up.
Right.
So the value is the agent tells them the value's here, but reality, the value's here. And there's a huge gap between reality because of 1482, Assembly Bill 1482.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. It's interesting too that from rent control, also just knowing, like here in the Bay Area, like Richmond, California has its own rent control. Oakland has its own rent control. Berkeley has its own rent control. San Francisco has its own rent control. And navigating the waters and understanding the nuances of all the different ones can really be a complete headache and nightmare versus what just the blanket of the state of California. So I couldn't agree with you more on your position here too. So
yeah, and again, rent control. This is what's going to happen in the next 12 to 36 months. We are going to have less affordable rentals in California. Correct. And it's just going to happen. And not everybody can be a home buyer. As much as we would like everybody to own a home, that's just not reality. There are lots of good reasons to be a renter. And if you suddenly take away all the single family home rentals, what's going to happen? And that's not a good story either.
I love it. Well, Michael, thank you for taking the time today and, sharing with my audience. I know obviously you share this with your audience as well. I think it's important, again, like you said in the very beginning, how important it is to vote. And even though I know this is a presidential year and everybody's focused on the presidential, I really believe for your audience, my audience, our audience, combined audiences, these real estate propositions here in California are really, really critical. Not only that we all individually vote, but also encourage your clients, your friends, your family, or at least give them the right information so that they can make an informed decision on their own. Mm-hmm. So any closing thoughts, Michael?
No, I just want to echo how we started this. I believe elections are really the power of the people. I believe there's a lot of people getting stirred up and energized this year. It's great. It's an election year, a presidential election year. But I want this energy and fire to keep up next year, the year after. If you really want to change your street, your county, your area, your state, you got to vote every year. You want the police to be different, vote for the sheriff. You want the district attorney, vote for the district attorney. There are so many things we could do to impact our areas and make it ours, but it only happens when you vote. And you got to vote consistently. You have to be informed. You have to encourage others. Elections are powerful. And if you're not going to vote, then you can't complain, in my opinion.
100%. Thank you, Michael, as always. You can follow Michael at One Rental at a Time. Personally, for me, I've got to say that what you're doing, Michael puts out a daily news. It's basically a summary of what's going on in the stock market, what's going on in Washington, D.C., what's going on in the state of California. He looks at a lot of headlines, and I know you put a lot of time and energy in preparing that. I personally am not a fan of traditional network news and news in general, based on how toxic it can be. but I love that, I am interested and I want to know what's going on economically. And I tune into your show every morning when I'm exercising. And I would encourage everybody to follow you, the YouTube channel at One Rental at a Time. You can also find him on Instagram. You can also find him on Facebook. He's doing a bunch of other free content as well about investments. Anything you want to add to that, Michael?
No, I think you've nailed it. Daily financial news goes out at 7:30. I do most of my stuff live, right? No post-production, no walkout music. I take a topic and go. Yeah, it's just who I am. And I tackle topics between 8 and 12 minutes. And yeah, it's fun. I enjoy giving back.
I love it. Well, thank you for being on with us today. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Michael. Have a great day.
You too.